yesterday, and she was,
Oh, there we go. Okay. We will definitely take care of that. No worries. And I love that. Yeah, it's all fun here, and we'll edit it and we'll make it interesting for everybody.
love it. Can't wait.
So, officially, welcome to For the Love of Literacy, Sarah. It
No,
is
you're
so good to
frozen.
see your face over the
It's my
screen and
internet.
finally, officially meet you after following you on Bookstagram for a while. And how
Yeah.
are you this evening?
I am good. I just got a message that said my internet connection is unstable, and that could not be more
Okay.
accurate. Life.
Well, we will roll with it and see
All
how it
right.
goes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here and talk about all things literacy and play. It's so nice to finally like talk to you one-on-one and see your face. So I'm just excited to be here.
It's so awesome to seriously to have you here. I think there are so many good things both you and Becca offer, not just the literacy community, but like the mom community. So
Oh, thank you.
will you take a minute and introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. So I am Sarah Libenrood. I created Wonderfully Read. It's been almost 2 years. We started the February before the whole world shut down.
Oh
So
wow.
the timing was a little interesting. But a little bit about my background. I grew up in Hilton Head, and then I went to Clemson for undergrad. Loved it. I got my undergrad in elementary ed, and then added an early childhood certification because I wanted to teach first grade. And in South Carolina, elementary ed is second through fifth grade. So I
Right.
added on
Okay.
that certification so that I would be certified to teach first grade. When I finished Clemson in May, I started my master's program in literacy that June. And then I started teaching first grade. I taught first grade for a few years, and then I taught fourth grade. And then after 6 years in the classroom, I left to be an instructional coach. And I coached for 4 years, kindergarten through fifth grade. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh
And
yeah.
then when I had my daughter, so I have a son, Coleman. I should have started with all that. My son is 5 and he just started kindergarten about a month ago. He loves it. And my daughter's 2. So when she was born in 2019, that's when I left the classroom or the school setting to stay home. And so I've been home for almost 2.5 years with them. And so when I started staying home, I found that I missed teaching and I missed the classroom and all of that, and just being immersed in. I was one of those nerds that like love to go to professional development. And so I just like I really just like
We're
I would read
connected. Yeah.
yeah, I would read professional development texts for fun. Like it's not a normal thing. So I loved being home with the kids and it was so fun, but I also missed that part. So one of my great friends, Joan, is a website developer, and we were talking about it one day, and she's like, "Oh, I'll do a website for you." And I was like, "Okay, well then I guess I need to have like an Instagram and Facebook and stuff too, right?" So it just kind of happened where I just wanted to share literacy tips with parents. I've always had a passion for helping parents. Even when I was in the classroom, I would host parent afternoons or do mornings before school started just to help parents understand what they can do at home, because parents want to help their child. There isn't a parent in the world that won't do anything, especially in today's world, to help them succeed in school and with their academics. And so I just really love supporting parents because they benefit so much from it, and they learn like, oh, I could do this. This is easy. Oh, I've post-it notes at home. I could throw some letters on them, put them on the wall, and send the kid on a scavenger hunt. So just really helping parents do what they know is best for their kids. I've had so many conversations lately of parents that were saying, I want to help, but I don't know what to do, or I don't have time to like make these elaborate Pinterest activities.
Right.
So just, I think the main goal is just to help parents help their children. because I think that's a huge need right now in our world.
No, that is huge. Because, for example, like I said, we're just going to connect all over the place.
Yeah.
I also did my undergrad and got my teaching degree in elementary education. I did not do early childhood, but in Utah, it was for K through, I think, 7th, actually. To me, that's middle school, but still. Anyway, maybe K through 8th, that would make more sense, but it definitely wasn't beyond, into high school. And I was so lucky. I got to teach 4th grade the whole time I taught. I taught 5 years, so almost as long as you. And I really loved it. And I found my place in 4th grade. I found my place because I really, I've always loved language arts and reading, but I really loved the stage where kids were reading to learn instead of learning to read. It's a big difference. I was chatting with someone about that because her son is having trouble getting into reading and he's in 1st grade. And I said, well, I'll be honest. Some kids don't feel like it's super fun to learn to read. But once they do, once you find what works for them, it'll be magical. So I was like, so I'm going to tell you about these things called graphic novels. Have you heard of them? She's like, no. And I'm like, okay, I didn't used to be a big fan of them, but my son has really picked them up. And even though he's not 5 yet, we've been practicing, sight words and learning phrases and different things to get ready to read. And I said, a graphic novel is so good for building their confidence because there's still words on the page, but there's typically less than there would be in a normal book. And it's like a comic book.
Yeah.
And especially boys tend to love that, but many girls do too. I myself have read many good graphic novels in the last year. And so I told her about that because everyone has to start somewhere, but it really does come down to what does my kid love, what are they interested in and what would they like to read about? And once you start there, I think it helps so much. But like you're saying too, I'm a mom that does preschool at home and tried to work with my 4.5 and my 3-year-old. And I still feel like I come up short as far as literacy activities sometimes. So I've used Susie's Busy Toddler program here at home, and it's been fun. And I've really focused on like the arts and crafts and the numbers and the alphabet, but I feel like actual activities, like I love is it Literacy Play Tuesday that you and Becca do?
Yeah, Becca's doing that. I'll join in every once in a while. But yeah, she's been doing that pretty consistently for the past few weeks.
Yeah. And it is so fun. It just always provides me with new ideas. And that's all I need. It's like, once I see it, I'm like, oh, I've got dot stickers. I have, butcher paper. I have markers. I have the dot markers for your activity or whatever it needs to be. And if you don't have it, it normally is pretty easy to go out and get. I just need those ideas sometimes. And so like what you do and what you're doing is so important and valuable.
You froze.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, now you're back.
Okay, now? Okay.
You're good.
I was going to say what you're doing is so, so valuable. And so let's talk a lot about the book you and Becca have been working on for 2 years, which I did not realize.
No, well, so the book, wonderfully read, just my website and blog.
That's the 2 years.
When I tell you this story of this book, I was telling my friend Joan today, and she's like, how did you pull this off? Like, and Becca and I were talking about it yesterday. We're like, how did we do this?
How did we do it?
We started it the end of June.
Okay. So, I want to know why you wrote it, who it's intended for, all the things. Okay.
All the things.
Don't hold that.
So Becca and I met through Instagram, which is hilarious now because I talk to her probably as much as I talk to my mother, which is quite frequently. So, we started just we met in like the book clubs with Courtney and Steph. And, so we just kind of met through that. And then we started collaborating on an Instagram post or a reel here and there, nothing consistent really. And then we decided to do a week-long series. And my son was getting ready to start kindergarten. She had just listened to a speaker that had talked about, 5 areas where kids really need to develop in order to succeed in kindergarten. And so we're like, let's just do like a week-long series, kindergarten readiness on those areas. So we focus on letter knowledge, name knowledge, rhyming, pre-writing skills, and play. So at the end of our week-long series, we put together a PDF of everything that we had shared throughout the week. So each day we shared a few activities. So at the end of the week, you signed up for our email and you got the free PDF download. I think at that point we were sitting at like 25 activities-ish.
Yeah.
Well, we got hundreds and hundreds of downloads, messages from people that thought it was just amazing. And people were like, why are you giving this away for free?
Yeah.
Because we're here to help the parents and help the children. We just want everybody to love learning. We want all the kids to play. Like, that's our goal. That's what we're passionate about. So we talked about it, and we decided to put it together into a book. And we used Kindle Direct Publishing so we could self-publish the book ourselves, which has been great. The editing part was definitely very tedious, but we worked hard. So we wanted to create simple, easy things that parents could do to hit those 5 areas. And they're not things that they need to master. I'll be honest, my son that started kindergarten, he does not know every single letter sound automatically. It's taking him some time, and that's okay. I'm not worried about it yet. And that's something that we want parents to really understand too, is they don't need to go to kindergarten knowing how to write every letter, how to say every letter. Really, they just need to work on spelling their name and the letter sounds that they're interested in and really following their lead. I can already tell a difference in my daughter and maybe it's because of my older son, but she's already starting to mimic letter sounds, and she wants both of their names start with a C. And so he'll make a C on the chalkboard. So she'll want to make a C. So it's just, at 2 years old, my son could care less about writing a C. So it's just really about following their lead throughout the book. But we also wanted to make things easy for parents, because things are hard enough right now for parents, especially when they're stuck at home in a quarantine for 2 weeks with their kids, or they're, they don't feel comfortable sending their children to school. So they're homeschooling. And I saw on the news the other day that the number of parents that are homeschooling has doubled in the past year. And so these parents, they need the support, because, it's already heavy out there. So we wanted to keep things simple. Most of the activities in our book are things you have at home: stickers, paper plates, Post-it notes, index cards, just really easy things. And if you run out of Post-it notes, you can add them to your grocery order. So it's just, really, you don't have to go to the school supply store or go online and download all these printable activities. These are just easy things that parents can do to help them feel like they're preparing their children, and they're not, I've heard so many parents say, well, I feel like my kid's just missing out on so much. And so we really wanted not only for these activities to be simple, but for them to also be rooted in play, because we know that that's the best way that children learn.
It's so true. I think that's huge. And actually it leads me to my next question, because, one major issue, and this is coming from the lips of a former public educator. One of the biggest issues we face in educating our kids is how to keep things, fun, engaging, and not to just, not to discourage our kids by putting too many assessments and those things in place. And so that's what's hard, is because sometimes, and as a teacher, you don't have much say over that. That's like the district, that's state, mandated.
Hands are tied.
So why did you and Becca feel like getting kids kindergarten ready through play is more effective, maybe even easier than like assessing your child constantly and doing drills? Because I'm going to say one more thing here with your little girl. My little one has also wanted to do more for preschool because her older brother's doing it, and she started mimicking the sounds that the letters make. And it reminds me how important that is, more so than that he knows every letter sound when he goes to school, and same with her. that they're having fun learning together, and that we are learning, but we play a lot. We play a lot and read a lot, you know? So sorry, that question one more time is, why did you and Becca feel like getting kids kindergarten ready through play is more effective than like the assessment, the drill, you know, that whole business?
Yes, the skill and drill.
Yeah.
Well, one, just to touch on the assessment piece, you can learn so much just by watching your child. You can observe what they can do. And I think through play, not only do you observe the academic piece, but you observe the life skills. Are they sharing? Are they cooperating? Are they following directions? You know, all of those things that are life skills that they are going to need to do and be successful at as an adult. So I think, you know, the assessment piece is always there. It's just, you're just observing your kid. It's not necessarily like in the classroom where you're checking it off, like, okay, do you know the letter A? Okay, what sound does A make? And check it off. But in a conversation, or while you're reading, or while they're playing, you can just hear how they're speaking to each other in their conversation. And so we know, sorry, that was my house alarm. My husband's going outside. But I think the whole play-based approach is rooted in research. You know, the research is there, and that supports how children learn best. That's how they gain their knowledge. That's where they learn their skills. And it's through play. And at that age, I was having a conversation today with someone who was talking about how their child is playing like, you know, bad guys and good guys, and the bad guy is always COVID. And and we were talking about how your child's anxieties and worries and fears and and even positive things like what they're excited about and what they're learning comes out when you watch them play.
Oh yeah.
You can learn so much about your child just by sitting back for a few minutes and watching them play, or interacting and playing with them for a few minutes, either way. But we want it to be fun. Our goal is to create and instill a love of reading and creativity and learning with our children. We don't want the learning to stop when they stop going to school. We want them to learn how to be lifelong readers and learners. And so by making it fun and setting that foundation where they have those positive connections with play and learning, it will benefit them well beyond kindergarten. And it helps, play helps so much with their social skills, and especially their language acquisition, which supports their literacy skills down the road. And so we both feel very strongly about play. And I'm so lucky that where my son went to preschool, they were very play-based. You know, it's the best thing when he comes home from school and he says, oh, the best thing I did was play in this center or the home living center. And then the kindergarten, he's in public school, and the kindergarten classroom he's in, they did a whole dramatic play center last week with apple picking. And they had, you know, the apples coming off the tree that they Velcroed, and they set up a cash register and a little sign that, you know, you could fill your bushel of apples.
Yeah, that's so cute.
And then it was right next to the home living center. And then they had the home living center where they were making apple pies, and, you know, and so
cute. Yeah.
I think it's also important not only for parents to do this at home, but for teachers too, to incorporate more play and the push for skill and drill and testing. And I could go into that for days and hours and forever, but they're losing it in the classroom. And so I've been relieved in the past few weeks to really learn that our public school is supporting that play-based approach, especially in kindergarten, because they're still babies in kindergarten. They're still little. And so we just think that learning through play, we know it's the most effective and fun way.
It is really fun. And like, you know, I think if we're really intentional in how we set things up, like you said, in your son's classroom, there was the, where they picked the apples, there was where they were baking the apples. If you have these centers set up, and again, it doesn't need to be Pinterest worthy. You don't need to go out and break the bank or buy a bunch of things to do this. But I mean, anytime we can encourage any kind of imaginative play. And so at our house, we've gotten to the point where we have quite a few games and toys. And so we try to rotate them just like we rotate some books. So that there's always that excitement when you pull it out. I mean, like we have all our holiday books put away until a certain point. Except I've been reading The Little Old Lady Who Wasn't Afraid of Anything for a straight month now.
That's okay.
It's not October, but you know, it's cool because I'm getting ready to record an episode about repetition in children's books and in reading, and including with my little one. She like always is like, read it again, read it again. And I'm going to talk about why we need to, instead of being annoyed by that, because sometimes, especially if it was a longer book, I'm like, can we read something else first? But there is actual value in returning and rereading that text right after you read it. You might notice more in the pictures. You might, your kids might feel like they can ask questions, or they start reciting, you know, the familiar lines. And there's just a lot of value in that. But I think it is really important for, especially for us at home and then for classroom teachers, to incorporate more play, because like you said, you can actually observe quite a bit about your kid and about your students from how they're playing and interacting versus just giving them a paper and pencil test.
Right.
Or a reading test, you know, where they read and you're like marking words or whatever. So, okay. So let's talk a little bit about your time as an instructional coach too, because that's cool. I think that's really fun. I like thought about doing that. I thought about being a literacy coach for a while. And then I got pregnant and I was very, very sick my last year of teaching. So that was when I, you know, resigned at that point. It was really hard. But I loved it. And like you, I missed the classroom. And so then I started my own tutoring business once my son was born and tutored from home. And then I started writing, you know, all kinds of ideas down, both for blog and a children's book. And so anyway, staying busy, but
yeah.
As an instructional coach, okay, tell us a little bit about what you did and then how that work impacted what you're doing now as a mama, a bookstagrammer, and an author. How did that impact all those roles?
That's a loaded question.
It is.
So I was an instructional coach. A lot of it was data focused. That's just because that's kind of how our, you know, public school system works right now. So I spent a lot of time analyzing data and really getting down to the nitty gritty of what the school needed in terms of instruction.
Gotcha.
But I think, so I spent a lot of time doing that. I spent a lot of time doing one-on-one coaching sessions or working with a team of teachers just to create things. I worked with our district office staff a lot because I was in Title I schools. And so we had some extra district support people, which was great because, I mean, I'm all about collaboration, and the more minds that we can get working toward the greater goal, which is these kids and pushing them forward. So we had a lot of support with that, just doing coaching cycles and going in and not necessarily observing in an administrative way, but going in and observing like, oh, this is really working. Like, what could we do to meet this child's needs versus this child's needs? Because as a teacher, you're one person in that classroom and you have 20 plus kids in there. And so just to have another set of eyes and ears to see what the kids are doing and what they're understanding or what they're not understanding was always fun. So I loved just getting in there and doing model lessons, coaching, and all sorts of that stuff. But I think one of the things that we really focused on in my last school, we were a balanced literacy school district, and we took the year to really focus on interactive read alouds. That was a big push for our school that year, just because I think, you know, when it's a busy day, the first thing that gets cut is like, oh, well, we can just skip our read aloud for that day. That's really terrible because that was always my favorite time as a student. I still can put myself in my second grade classroom, sitting in that little area with my teacher, reading to us. And so that was our big focus. And we had a lot of buy-in from all the teachers because it was something that was easy. It didn't require a ton of planning, but it did require being intentional about just like 2 to 3 questions and asking the kids and teaching them how to listen to a book and take it in and really think about whatever our focus was that week, if we were thinking about characters' actions or, whatever it was. And then that piece of the day, the kids also would turn and talk to each other. So it was moving beyond academic skills, and the kids were learning how to talk to one another and to share their ideas and say, oh, I like that idea. I hadn't thought of that. And so just getting the kids talking to each other about books and getting them excited about reading. And so I think that piece, that year that we spent with interactive read alouds, really has affected what I do as a parent and how I'm intentional about not asking too many questions when we're reading books. And when I do ask a question, it's a very intentional question about what the character might, at this point with a 5-year-old, it's nothing too deep, but it's like, oh, well, why do you think this character did this? He loves Jabari jumps. And so, just relating it back, making those personal connections to the text. So I think that part really impacted me. And it also allowed me to see other books that teachers were reading. I found, because of this series that we did, I found out about the book Winnie, that's based on the true story of Winnie the Pooh. And that's one of my all-time favorite picture books. So I just think seeing how other teachers worked and how they taught, it was just very eye-opening. And every time I saw something, I'm like, I would do 100 things different if I went back into the classroom and emulate whatever I was seeing out. And I think that was the best part about being an instructional coach, was being able to see all these other amazing teachers and what they're doing. Because as a classroom teacher, you're focused on your kids and what you're doing in that moment. And so being able to take that step back and look and just see everyone's skill set and what they're able to do, it made me a better teacher, and it would change how I taught in the classroom for sure. But I think also as an instructional coach, I got to spend more time with parents. And because we were Title I schools, we had a lot of parent functions, and we had things during the day where we would invite parents in. And so just being able to talk to them, and they ask me questions about, well, my child is doing this at home, how can I help them? And just seeing what their struggles were, because at the time I didn't have Coleman until I had already been an instructional coach for a year. So I never had that teacher parent perspective. And so looking back, that was a great experience, because I could see firsthand and interact with the parents and hear what their struggles were and what they needed the support with. So I think that's been helpful in this process of writing this book and my Wonderfully Read blog and social media and all of that, because from a parent's perspective, that's kind of what it's geared toward. I think our book is great for teachers and they can pull activities and do them, but it's more geared for parents who are like, I don't know what to do. My kid doesn't know his letter sounds. How can I practice that at home besides just buying flashcards and doing it? Like, how else can we help them? Because they're bored, I'm bored, I don't know what to do. And that and when they're bored and everybody's frustrated, that doesn't help. So just showing parents that it can be really simple and it doesn't have to be these elaborate activities that they do.
I like that you really pointed out the piece about when you get kids talking to each other in the classroom. I would do that part even more differently now that I've learned a lot more about reading comprehension and how valuable it is, because you get kind of caught up in the reading fluency and how important it is to be a quick reader as well as a comprehensive reader. But when we really look at the skills we want our kids to emerge from school with, we want them to be able to have the ability to think critically about things. And that comes from a reading comprehension more than how fast they could read.
Absolutely. And when you read aloud to them, you're taking that pressure off of them to decode the words. So you're freeing up that space in their brain where they can think critically and they can make decisions and they can, develop those reading comprehension skills that they do need beyond the book, that they need just in life.
Right, because it's extending those concepts from the books that makes it like more applicable. I mean, I remember I would write down the questions that the basal reader, encouraged me to ask. And then I would add a few questions, but I was never really like, yes, I was asking very like dumb questions. Like, I mean, like I say it like that because it's like, go back in the text and find out why so-and-so did this. Well, I want my students to actually be able to infer based on what they've read and on their prior experience, why so-and-so, sold their bike. What were they really trying to do? Even though that upset X, Y, and Z, why did they do that? So I really wanted and want to continue encouraging children to think outside the box rather than tell me who the story is about. Why is this your favorite story? Like the questions that
Who are the main characters?
Yeah, you can ask them, but like that's not helping
but
their
in
brain bloom. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, and also relate, especially at this young age where 4, 5, 6, 7, even into probably middle school and high school. That's not my area of expertise, but I'm sure it could apply. Well, what would you do if you were that character? With Jabari jumps, I've asked my son, and that was a very telling. Well, it really mirrored our summer because our neighborhood pool has a diving board, and so he got.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of been a funny joke all summer, and we've been, calling him Jabari at the pool or whatever, because he finally. Then I'm like, do you want to be like Jabari and face your fear and jump into that water?
Right.
And so and that's a silly example, but mostly about like their character development as humans, being kind to each other, making the right decision, whether or not somebody else is going to approve of it or not, just having that good character. I think you can learn a lot through picture books. And so getting them to see characters in certain situations that mirror their real life is very powerful.
I agree. The more we can bring those books to life, and as you mentioned earlier, the interactive read alouds, I think that is just so powerful. And that's why I love reading, is because it does take you to a different world. It maybe introduces you to new people. Yeah. But I've loved like the classrooms or the libraries that decorate with their favorite characters from books. And it's literally like walking into the world with those characters, especially the more time you spend reading them. But as you also mentioned, reading aloud is so important because our kids' ability to comprehend things is actually above their reading level. And that's especially that way through 7th grade, I think, which is almost half their, it's more than half their schooling. Yeah. So if you think about that, that was one reason I always prioritized reading a chapter book aloud to my students after lunch. Yes, they could read to themselves, but they really got into it because we did all the things. We did the voices, we did little plot story sequence things, but then they really grew to love those characters in a way that's just endearing for me to even think back on. And so like, even though my son is probably almost to the point where we can read chapter books, we've really only read like Nate the Great